because this is there in first year. Is you all to give what sort of industries available and what are the things that we have to, for the animal production by Department of Animal Science, what we give to you, because that it may be your opportunity, your career opportunity, and you should know if you're studying the animal science, you should know what type of livestock as an industry. That's very important, whether you want to put up a farm or whether you want to join already existing farm, and what are the problems, what is the benefits. So all these things will be analyzed in this livestock industry. Will give a very, uh, very informative things will be shared in this lecture. So here in livestock industry, production system in the livestock sector range from backyard production to intensive stall fed and market oriented system. That everybody. So it's everybody is having the farm. Some may have one animal at home. Some may have few animals. Some may have very large. So small scale, medium scale, large scale. We used to say small scale farm, medium scale, and large scale farm. Depend on if it is a small scale farm, the number is different, maybe 1 to very limited number. Medium is some sort of little higher than that. Large scale is with a lot of animals. So whether the people are keeping the animal, what the purpose? What are the purpose? Whether they are going to have it for their own production. Some people have cattle, 1 or 2 cattle, cow, because they want to get the milk to drink. Like they may have some few birds to get egg. So likewise, the purpose different. Sometimes if it is excess, you sell it to the neighbors, and then you increase likewise. The middle scale, or if it is a large scale or industrial level, it's a huge one. So you do everything for the production. So that is, the management system, how you are managing the farm, it's quite different. What is the purpose, the scale, whether small scale, large scale, or medium scale, the management is different. Okay? The animals, so when you are having a large scale farm, depend on the production. If you are going to have it for the egg production, so you should have the animal birds, especially for the egg production. So the strains are there for the egg production. Broiler is different. So there is no egg in broiler production. So like within the layers, you have to have the female birds. So likewise, the purpose and the management is different to farm. Okay. Backyard, usually at home we say backyard production. It's a small scale. Sometimes more animal, that depends. But backyard means at home. Intensive is keeping many animals in a place. So intensive, semi-intensive, extensive management. These are the type of management. I think we'll do that later, but just for the time, just remember extensive means, for example, I'm taking a cattle. So if you have a cattle, you just send the cattle freely for grazing. You're not going to feed the animal at their store where they are being housed. So when you provide a house, you don't feed the animal. You just allow the animal to a flock, a pasture to feed themselves, browse, graze themselves. So semi-intensive means partly you allow the animal to go to move around to get their food, partly you're feeding, cut and feed, a partial, not completely depend on cut and feed. Cut and feed in the sense you cut the grass somewhere else if it is available, you feed the animal. The farmer is having some farmers, if they're having enough space and if they are good enough, they cultivate the old pasture breed. These days the pasture breeds are available. They are good for the milk production. So depend on the purpose of animal, the pasture variety is there. If you're rearing the cattle for milk production, there are pasture like CO3, CO4, Bracharia. These are new varieties improved from other country. We imported and we are cultivating these days. So when you feed these to animal, you get a good production yield. Milk yield will be higher. So feeding of fresh grasses improves the milk production. Okay. So usually the farmer used to say, I'm feeding a lot of concentrate to my cow, but the milk is poor quality. I don't get a good price. The milk is paid when you are having, I mean, I don't know if you have experience, like when you're selling the milk to a farm, I mean, the company or the milk collection center, usually they go with this fat percentage of the milk and the SNF, and then you have to multiply the liters of milk, not only paid by the liters of milk. So if you have a milk, they check the fat percentage, if it is a good percentage fat, and the SNF, according to that, you will be paid. The milk will be paid. If, even though it is a high amount, but these percentage are less, you don't get a higher price. So it's just usually these days it's going around 80 rupees, 62, something like that. But when a farmer is like telling, I'm feeding a lot of concentrate, but I am not getting a higher price. That means when you're feeding higher concentrate, the milk will be watery. You have to feed concentrates like this mash, cattle mash, and this punak and so on. We have to feed, but it should be limited, not more than that. So animal, the cattle, they, I mean, your previous lectures we talked about this complex stomach. Because of their stomach system, you have to feed grasses. I mean, the fresh green grasses, pasture variety, because that is the one provide essential fatty acid and amino acids to the animal. Because of the microflora in their stomach, they convert these cellulose, hemicellulose to valuable product, amino acids or fatty acids. So then only you get a high percentage in the mix. So animal which are fed on fresh pasture, fresh free green pasture, then on, they will get a higher price in the market because those are the precursors. So the cellulose and the hemicellulose. So those are the precursors for this amino acid and essential fatty acid production. So that's why it's a must to produce. So, but we have to give concentrate to the animal, but it's very, I mean, limited amount. So in cattle, it's around 20% concentrate we can add. So if you're giving 100% food, I mean 100, if you're giving a ration, we call them ration, food, 20% could be their concentrate. 80% should be these fresh green grasses for higher milk production. So beef production is different. In our country, we don't have a beef industry. But in other countries, if they have a beef industry, they are feeding the grains. Okay, the grains, that's different. So feeding system is different because to get a good muscular. So depend on the purpose. So here also for the goat, very few farms only getting the milk, but other farms in other countries, the goat milk is very higher price. Even in Sri Lanka, goat milk fetch higher price. 1 liter of goat milk is around 1,000 rupees. 1 liter goat is around 1,000 rupees. But you know the price of cow milk is somewhere like 80 to 100 rupees per liter. But goat milk is very expensive. So 1 liter more than 1,000 rupees. So it's very expensive. Only few farmers are producing this cow milk. Goat milk. So the backyard, so intensive, semi-intensive, expensive. Now you understand it's sort of different. So other things also quite different when you're coming under extensive. You don't need to spend much time with animal because you're sending them freely. But there is chance of development of disease, extensive management system. Because when you're sending the animal, some other farmers also sending. So these animals are mixing up, will get disease chance. Semi-intensive, it's in between. Intensive means you have to, animals are in a house and completely you're feeding, cut and feed. Okay, so I have to explain that one. In intensive management means you're keeping animal, you're not sending the animal anywhere for feeding. You're not sending the animal for feeding completely. You cut the grass somewhere else, whether your own farm, the farmer's own farm, or else some other places. Cut and feed the animal completely. You're not sending the animal outside. So these two different, the semi-intensive falls in between these two, the management system. So this, based on the management system, it varies whether intensive, semi-intensive, or extensive. Okay, stall fed, it's related to intensive. Okay, market oriented, whether you're feeding, whether you're producing for fully completely for marketing purpose. The backyard production is characterized by indigenous stock being allowed to roam freely and scavenge for their feed. So that's what usually at home. So when you're having a backyard production means, so usually having indigenous breed, not improved breed most of the time. Indigenous breed belongs to our country, and they are just, you are not worrying about their feeding and just freely you're sending, and they are getting their own food. So you are not spending your time anything, not much time. You're not just having the animal. You just send the animal for feeding, and late in evening you're getting back the animal. But you're getting the production for the home purpose. So that is backyard production. You're not spending much more. You're not spending more money for their housing. You're not spending more money for their well-being. So that's different. So it has been described as low risk, low investment, low production, low return enterprises. Usually this backyard is for their own purpose, especially, so there are not much investment there. So low production. Production is low because of this indigenous breed. So they are having this indigenous breed, and you are not selling your own purpose, so low income. Okay, and is representative of an extensive form of management system. It's something like extensive management system, but quite different, because extensive management system can be imposed in a big scale, large scale farm. Some large scale farm, they are having extensive management system. If they're having plenty of land, plenty of people, and the caretakers, they can cultivate their own pastures, the grasses. So if they are doing like that, you are not feeding the animal. Just send them freely for their grazing. And if you have enough spaces, you can have this extensive farm, but large scale farm. Okay, so that's depend. It's a form of the backyard production is a form of extensive, but not, it's different, quite different. Extensive management system can have indigenous breed, good breeds are there. Okay, usually it's a farm scale, a large scale, at the medium scale you can practice extensive, but you can have a good breeds, imported breeds. But here in indigenous backyard farm, you are having this indigenous breed, our country breed. Okay. The stock numbers usually range from 1 or 2 heads of cattle, 3 to 5 goats, 5 to 10 pigs, or 15 to 25 poultry per unit farm. So this is for the backyard. Okay, backyard you can have 1 or 2 cattle. Okay, 3 to 5 goats, very few. 3 to 5, very less, not more than that. 5 to 10 pigs, that depends. 15 to 25 birds, little higher because the size. So that's for the backyard production. Enterprises may be diversified, but there is a minimal crop livestock integration. Okay. There are essential supplementary enterprises are there. In the extensive system, there can be several variations, one of which is where cattle and goats are allowed to graze freely during both day and night. So this is what I explained. So in extensive system, so you have the cattle or whatever the breed. Even in poultry, we have this extensive system, limited but extensive system. You can have improved breeds, good breeds of animal. You allow the animal graze freely during daytime and nighttime. You are not having any restriction in extensive system. Another variation is where the animal are kept in paddock or restricted area for the night. But sometimes that depends. So even though if it is extensive system, so daytime only they are sending the animals. Okay, for the grazing, the daytime they are sending, but nighttime they are coming to paddocks. Paddocks means sort of the places where they are housed. Okay, the paddocks mean in a pasture. So you can hit the animal. Extensive system, you don't have a, very well defined housing. You may have a house, that depends, but not very confined like intensive system. In intensive system, so this housing should be very, very very, how do you say, very much, you have to spend more concentration on this housing system in intensive, but extensive not that much. So you can keep this animal in paddocks. Paddocks are the pasture land which is divided. Okay, you divide. So if you have a pasture land, you divide and allow the animal. So if you have a pasture land, you don't send the animal completely on the pasture without any restriction. But usually the farmers are dividing into paddocks. Paddocks means just you are dividing. Whether you can use fencing, okay, you do some fencing, not the permanent fencing or temporary fencing. Divide the pasture land into many pieces. If you have 1 acre of land, you can divide into 4, and you send the animal to one quadruped, one space, and the few days later you can send it to the next one. So likewise, you can rotationally send for grazing. So those things will come later, but just time for remember the paddock system is the pasture land which is divided. Okay. Sometimes in night you keep the animal in paddock or restricted area for night. So that depends on the management system, extensive management system. In general, these animal feed concentrates are not fed to these animals. So in extensive system, not feeding this concentrate, okay, or completely grazing, not feeding. So usually, but sometimes there may be exceptions, but I don't know. But usually, when you define as extensive system, not feeding concentrate. So at the other end of the scale, one will find intensive production system characterized by high levels of management and intensive use of capital and labor. So that's what I told in intensive system. So extensive system, you don't spend much of the labor, much money. You don't give more money for investment. You just the housing and everything. You're not spending more money. But intensive system, because you're keeping the animal completely in a space, in a place, so you have to spend more money. Okay. High level of management. You have to manage the animal very carefully because you have to give everything to the animal, feeding and watering and everything. So that's high level of management. And intensive use of capital and labor. The worker, okay, the workers, the laborers, whether you are doing by yourself or the family members can do, that's depend. Hiring the laborers. So everything here, it's very intensive. Capital is also higher, not like intensive, extensive. They are market oriented and provide opportunities for vertical and horizontal integration. Okay, so whether you're going to keep the farm, so these are mainly based on the market. So intensive is usually for the marketing purpose. So whether it's a small scale, large scale, that's not a problem. So this intensive system, whether small scale, large scale, or medium scale, whatever, usually based on this market oriented. Okay. Another variation is where the animal are kept. So, at present, pig and poultry present the opportunities for large scale operation, probably because they respond well to confined rearing and concentrate feed. So but there are large scale, but in our country, pig and this poultry are more in intensive system. They tend to be confined to peri-urban areas and have to have little links with agriculture. Peri-urban is across surrounding the urban. Usually the farms are not in the urban because of their pollution and environmental concern. So usually the farms, when you get a license, they don't give in urban. When the human are concentrated, you cannot have this farm, okay, because so many issues are there. So usually it's, around the urban, away from the urban people, crowded area. An intermediate semi-intensive system may also be identified. It can be seen to function chiefly as a complementary enterprise using unutilized resources as crop residues and agro-industries byproducts and the family labor. So it provides opportunities for crop and livestock integration. So there comes the next thing. So the farming system, whether you're having the farm only for the animals or you have this mixed farm. Mixed farm in the sense crop and animal. Because when you have this crop integration, so we call them integration, crop livestock integration. So crop you can have these whether whatever the vegetable crops or whatever a human consuming crop with the livestock animals. So one you get sort of benefits. Crop residues or crop things can be fed to the animals, and animal manure urine can be fertilized for the crop. So these two are very combined and they have both will have benefit effects. Okay. Beef industry. So that's in cattle beef industry. So in Sri Lanka, there is no specialized beef industry. So emphasis is to be placed on traditional source of beef. Okay, so that's the problem because of our socio-ethnic purpose, we are not having this beef industry. Okay? But you know, the animals are being slaughtered. So many cattle every day, slaughtering the cattle. But that's not a very specialized sector. So these we call the unspecialized cattle sector. The animal surplus, when you're having the animal, whether backyard or even whatever, middle scale or large scale, whatever the purpose, animal surplus, excess animal to local drugs, to gammon, and the bull calves of dairy industry. So these are being sent to the unspecialized sector, beef sector, surplus, excess animal, okay, bull calves from the dairy because we don't want the much bull. We have to have the bull animal. Not have even we don't need to keep bull in a cattle farm for the dairy production. So if they are doing artificial insemination, so that's what I told earlier. This natural insemination, artificial insemination. So if you are having natural mating system in your farm, you have to keep bulls, okay, male animal. If you don't have, I mean, if you are doing only AI, artificial insemination, artificially you're breeding. So there you don't need the bull, but for teaser or something to identify the animal in heat. So these things I told in your first few classes. What is artificial insemination? So there you don't need a bull animal. So these bull you can sell it to this beef production. Okay. Major proportion of the animal for beef market of Colombo and other cities comes from dry zone, especially the eastern, northern, and north central provinces. So the beef market you may have seen, I don't know whether you have seen, but sometimes the animal are transported. I mean, you would have seen very low productive animal, this male animal, okay, not in the dairy production. So they are being selling to this Colombo and so I mean the other urban areas from these northern, eastern, north central provinces because of the beef production. Okay. The estimated consumption level of beef 0.97 kilogram per capita per annum, okay, per head per annum is found to be lower than the recommended nutrition requirement of beef. So you know this AOAC and the WHO recommend certain amount of animal feed. So usually if you take a poultry, there is a sort of number value is there per capita. Okay, per capita, per head, how much you can eat per year. Okay, so it's there. So that's depend on the place to place. This is vary, but the WHO recommended around 1.92 nutritional level for this beef consumption, but in our country very less, 0.97. There are people not consuming beef. Okay. The high demand for beef will lead to increased slaughter rate and depletion of natural health, declined its slaughter weight. Okay. Slaughtering of young cattle and illicit slaughter of valuable female stock. So we have so many restrictions in our country when slaughtering the cattle for meat production, beef production. Okay, but it is increased. Okay, these days certain statistics say the production, not the production, demand for beef production is increasing because of that. So as we don't have a proper industry, beef industry, so there is a depletion, reducing national herd, because you are just selling the surplus animal and the male animal in dairy industry. So likewise, you're not having the animal, rearing the animal for beef production. So that's depletion in national herd. So that's really a problem. Okay. So if we don't have a proper beef industry, so if you have a proper beef industry, you're growing the animal for beef production only. Okay, but we don't have, but the demand is increasing in our country. Okay, so we have restrictions slaughtering female animal. Okay, but sometimes there may be illegal slaughtering. Okay, so no female animal should be slaughtered, but there may be illegal slaughtering, but really that's against. So if a person is found to be slaughtering this female animal, will be imprisoned, because that's very higher crime like that. Okay. The government has enforced Animal Act and regulations to prevent slaughter of young calves, female cattle, buffaloes, but the regulations are not being followed in many parts of the country. That is there. Okay. So our country's act, so these Animal Act regulations are very country to country. Each animal is having their own Animal Act. Okay, but based on one particular. But in our country, we are not having this beef industry and slaughtering the animal. But we can slaughter the animal, surplus animal, and the bull in dairy farm. Okay? The regulations also same. The act and regulations are there based on the country. But in other countries, they have this beef production. So we don't have a beef producing unit. So we should be very, very, I don't know whether it's positive or negative, but we don't have beef related policies. Okay, we just can sell these animal, excess male. Okay, the surplus male, not females are slaughtered. We cannot in Sri Lanka. The females should not be slaughtered. Okay, but females slaughtered when veterinarian certified this animal is not cannot be used as a breeding stock. Then only they are found so many defects in their reproductive system. So one should certify, veterinarian should certify this animal female is not used for production. So why? So this should give a certificate. You just cannot give a certified yourself. So we have to have what is the defect and everything. The detail form is there. We have to fill and we have to give the proper reason why this female allowed for slaughtering. But female slaughtering is very, very prohibited in our country. Okay. Okay. So with this, I'll stop because I have my own some other work. So I thought to cancel the lectures, but I don't like because yesterday also I canceled. So if you have any problem, you can ask, or you can ask me next class. So I'll stop. Okay, thank you. If you have any doubt, you can ask. If not, you can ask me next class. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.